Pretty solid portal cycle for Michigan State so far, but where do they still need to improve? And this Michigan State basketball team, well, yeah, it's pretty safe to say that they can contend for the Big Ten title, but can they be even more than that? Let's find out.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
College football playoff is here, and don't miss any of the moments or the action. The college football playoff presented by Allstate begins with 4 first-round games December 20th and 21st on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and Max. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning into Locked On Spartans. You already know it is your team in green and white 5 days a week. Please rate, review, subscribe. Comment below how you are feeling so far about Michigan State's portal cycle so far, because it's like decent, solid, 6 pickups for our Spartans. We talked about 4 of them on yesterday's show, and we will, of course, talk about this in the first, if not the second, segment 2 before getting into basketball talk in segment 3. But yeah, our Spartans, they're ranked 16th in the transfer portal classes right now, according to both On3 and 24/7 Sports. Rivals has them ranked, as of the time of recording, 26th, so not terrible, in no way, shape, or form outstanding, but yeah, I think it's fine right now. But do we still have work to be done? Yes, we do. We'll get into more of that, but first, let's just talk about the straight up news in the portal. A few guys have visited. Someone will be visiting here very shortly, and amongst the guys that just visited, Malcolm Bell. That is a UConn cornerback. Played 8 games for the Huskies, started 4 of them. And actually, as a corner, he rated as the 3rd highest graded player on that UConn defense last season. If you take the words of the fine folks at Pro Football Focus for anything, graded out as a 75.4. Now, Malcolm Bell, whale of experience under his belt. He's played 1,424 snaps of collegiate football. So kind of very similar to Joshua Eaton, right? The cornerback that you just got yesterday, or now at this point, 2 days ago, out of Texas State, will be his 6th year in college next year in East Lansing. But yeah, guys, this secondary is so bordering on thin now at this point with the departures of Ed Woods. Of course, you also saw Jalen Thompson leave in the portal. You're going to need some help there. Charles Brantley, the other corner that just left too. So yeah, you could use any experience you can get. Keep your eye on Malcolm Bell out of UConn. Also, someone that is visiting here in the near future, Kahlee Tafai from Washington. 6'5", 335-pound offensive lineman from the other Huskies. We just talked about one East Coast Huskies team. This gentleman from Washington played in 8 games last year, started in 4 of them, just like Malcolm Bell. This is getting weird at this point, but of course, other side of the ball. At 6'5", 335 pounds, Tafai was not playing cornerback like Malcolm Bell. He was playing exclusively left tackle. He had about 6 snaps at right tackle, but all the other snaps were at that left tackle position. Now, this is not going to be easy to get Tafai's playing talents over here. He's going to visit Alabama. He's going to visit Minnesota and UCLA. But Michigan State, they get the last say with Kahlee Tafai. I think it's interesting, too, because, he also considered Oregon State back in 2023. They were one of the finalists when it came down to his commitment. And, of course, our current offensive line coach, Jim Maholchek, he was the main recruiter for Kahlee Tafai back in that 2023 cycle. So who's to say? We'll keep our eye on that one as he visits this upcoming weekend. And really quick, we talked about this after Eli Tolliver committed out of Sacramento State. That's a running back out of the great state of California. We said, Jamari Taylor out of NC State, he's going to be visiting here very shortly. Yeah, no, he won't be. After they got that running back, we said I'd be surprised if they take any other running backs. No, they're going to shut down all running back portal activity as of now, probably going into next season. Now, also, we just had another gentleman, and this is going to springboard our next topic of conversation, Grady Kelly, defensive tackle from Florida State. And Tom writes in, Sheehan_sports. You can also reach out to us at lockedonspartans@gmail.com. Love the skill position additions. Any update on D-line help coming? Any players of note we should be on the lookout for? Well, Grady Kelly, right there, that's one guy you got to keep your eye on because well, they also haven't had a lot of defensive linemen, if any other ones, on campus so far this portal cycle. 19 tackles for Grady Kelly last year, 2.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack. He got 3 pressures last year. Now he did also come from Colorado State. He played 2 years prior to that pretty, routinely for that program over there. 18 pressures the year before at Colorado State, 17 the year prior. So did pretty well over there in the mountains at Colorado State. And this year for Florida State, he did play behind 2 guys that are off to the NFL draft. So you can say that as, maybe that's why his production was a little short this year. But also, if we're going to keep it a buck right now, it's not necessarily a Florida State team that was lighting the world on fire on the front necessarily. But again, hey, it's depth, it's experience. He has done it at a lower level, and did anything really go well for anyone at Florida State? So can't blame the kid if he just wants a new landscape to look at for his final year of eligibility. Now, the defensive line room, specifically the interior of the defensive line, right now, Alex Van Sumeren, Ben Roberts, Ruquan Buckley, Jalen Satchel, Mike Schoenbeeler, Ben Nelson. All right, those are 6 guys. You know the names, their depth, their experience. 2 of those guys we just mentioned, Ben Nelson, Alex Van Sumeren, 4 stars, right? But I am a little surprised at the lack of activity in the defensive line for the portal cycle right now. Right? Obviously Grady Kelly, they just had him in. And I'm not, totally super panicked about it, especially with the interior defensive line. They did a good job at stopping the run last year more times than not, so that's nice. But it is well storied that Michigan State was historically bad at rushing the passer last year. And yes, that does come from the edge, the outside. It comes from scheming, of course, but you still want a good interior defensive line to take some, of the attention of the offensive line when you're trying to rush the quarterback. So as bad as it was last year rushing the quarterback, I'm a little surprised. And look, I know full well what the portal is and the portal isn't. I know where Michigan State stands and where they don't. I know. Look, it was a lot of fun getting Kenneth Walker a few years ago, an instant impact player, a guy that nearly single-handedly brought Michigan State to double-digit wins that year. That's rare. That is not what the portal usually is. The portal is usually just for Band-Aids on top of glaring holes that you could have. And when it comes to what kind of a program Michigan State is and isn't, well, let's say that, okay, well, one of these top-ranked guys goes into the portal. They're probably going to go to a really nice SEC team that is A, more established, B, going to have more exposure, and C is probably going to pay a lot more money than Michigan State. With all that said, I still would like to see a little bit more visitors on the defensive line coming to Michigan State, and specifically the edge, too, guys. And yes, 10 minutes before recording, they did offer Jaden Moore from Oregon. And they have offered a few guys, but they haven't gotten anyone on campus for a visit yet. I'm trying not to pull all the alarms right now and go into a full-fledged panic because there's still a week and a half left for guys to even announce they want to enter the portal in this cycle. And then, of course, the spring window opens. But, yeah, I don't know. That was really uninspiring what we saw last season on the field. What was it, 6 games in a row? They went without a sack. And now we're just going to trust the guys that are still there to develop year after year into going from terrible to above average. I don't know. I love the staff trusting the players. I love the message that sends, but I also love bodies and guys that have actually produced at literally any level. I'm not asking for an SEC transfer to come up here and just absolutely wreak havoc on the Big Ten. I'll take a guy that was really productive in the Sun Belt at this point, or someone that, made some hay at the MAC. I'll take anyone at this point. So I'm sorry to rain on the parade here. Again, Michigan State's sitting solid right now, 6 pickups. We like the pickups. We think that some position groups, namely the wide receiver group, has gotten better already this portal cycle. But yeah, if we could just be honest about this, I would like a little bit more visitors from the defensive line. And it's not it's a hard sell to come here. Pretty apparent that you will be competing, if not be just named to the starting job right here, especially if you're an edge rusher. So That's where I stand on that. We got some more portal stuff to talk about. Just some great questions out of the mailbag from you beautiful folks. But first, need to talk your people's ears off about the college football playoff. It is that time of year again. The college football playoff is back, and with a newly expanded 12-team format, it is guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, the SMU Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then, the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. All right, let's get back to keeping it upbeat here. Again, not to just be a Debbie Downer on it, but yeah, just curious that, it seems like it had a real glaring error going into this offseason, or at least a position of need, and outside of Grady Kelly, kind of been crickets there. Now, it could be a situation where Eli Tautoliver, the running back from Sacramento State, how 6 people knew about that visit. A lot of recruiting experts were really caught off guard by that. Maybe there's visits we don't know about, but yeah, that's where we're at right now. Now, Sports Facts 16. Usually we take mailbag questions on Twitter, Sheehan_sports or lockedonspartans@gmail.com. But this one came from the comments section of a recent YouTube video. They wrote in, I have a question for you. Hopefully it stays this way, but with only 12 players entering the portal and Smith bringing in 61 new players last year and only 2 of those 61 players entering the portal this cycle, how do you feel about that and the culture that it seems Smith has built up? I'm sorry to be Mr. Well, actually, over here, but it is 14 right now. Maybe you didn't count Antonio Gates Jr., who hasn't been with the program since the calendar flipped to November. Regardless, 12 to 14 players, it's semantics. Who cares? Now, there only is one guy last year, or I guess Smith guy, you could call him, a guy that committed and signed to Jonathan Smith's class last year, or a guy that transferred to Michigan State under Smith last year, that has left in this portal cycle, and that's Jalen Thompson, the cornerback from Tennessee. And he cited family medical issues, wants to be closer to home. Don't know any further than the situation. Obviously, we hope nothing but the best for him. Unfortunate. So that's the one guy that's defected under guys that Smith has brought in, again, in that signing class last year or last year's portal cycle. If you want to count guys like Jerron Glover, Charles Brantley, guys that went into the portal only to come back to Michigan State, fine, I guess it's your prerogative, but what Sports Facts 16 is saying is that, okay, there's not a lot of guys that defected that Smith has picked up. Does that say something about the culture? I absolutely think it does. It has to, because, look, a lot of our trust right now, a lot of our faith, and for good reason, is that, you know what, when you build a program, you got to start with the culture, and then you worry about everything else as you move forward. Okay, well, in order for that to work out, you actually need to back up what you're kind of saying there, and they are. I mean, if you want this to be a whole, we want guys that fit our certain culture sort of thing, well, you have it right there by the guys they brought in with that recruiting class and the portal cycle last year, all sticking around for the most part. I think that really does speak to, okay, well, Smith, he isn't just saying and doing all this for no reason. It's working. Well, I guess we'll stay tuned to see if it actually does work, but the idea of what he's trying to do so far is working here. Now, MSU Realist, we're going to talk more about the portal. We're going to talk more trenches, but the other side, because they ask, who are the most realistic offensive linemen that we could land soon? Now, you got Luka Vincic out of Oregon State. You got Caleb Carter from Western Carolina. Now, Luke Baklenko, he visited Michigan State very early on in this portal cycle. He has committed to Oklahoma. That was the offensive tackle out of Stanford. He will be down in Boomer Sooner country. Now, I did throw this name around too, Jesse Rammel. That's Stanton Rammel's older brother. He played at James Madison last year. I believe he has 4 years of college experience already. He's kind of played everywhere on the line. I'm a little surprised that maybe they haven't reached out to him, because if you're reaching out to guys like Caleb Carter, a guy that is versatile on the offensive line, has played at that group of 5 level or FCS level, what have you, bring in Stanton Rammel's brother, I guess. It kind of fits your same need. Nevertheless, you you guys are realistic, guys, and I'm giving you someone that they haven't even, reached out to yet. But Kahlee Tafai, I mean, I would keep your eye on that one. I know, again, like we're going up against the Alabamas of the world, Minnesota, who's already having a really strong portal class so far. They're after him. UCLA, if he wants to stay on the West Coast. But there's something about that relationship that he's had with Jim Holchek in the past during his high school recruitment that has me raising an eyebrow and wondering, yeah, like I could kind of see this. And look, Michigan State needs help at the tackle position. I think Stanton Ramble comes back as a left tackle to next year's team. And yes, that is what Tafai played last year, but it's wide open at right tackle this year. Yes, I know that Ashton Lepo's coming back, but if we could be honest about the lack of production for the defensive line, we'll just keep on being big old meanie Mr. Matt here. There's competition to be had all over that offensive line, namely at right tackle, I like to think. So come on down, Kahlee Tafai. Keep your eye on that one. Again, the visit's coming this upcoming weekend, should he not commit anywhere else ahead of time. But yeah, that for realistic, I'm sorry to just give you a guy that we talked about in the first segment, but that's someone that I would keep your eye on. Again, that goes hand in hand with the defensive line, the edge rush position, like offensive line. Look, Luka Vincic, okay, solid pickup. That was their starter in waiting for their interior offensive line over at Oregon State, a lot of people assumed. Caleb Carter, that's going to be a depth piece, I think. But then again, with his versatility and just how not great the offensive line was last year for Michigan State, who am I to say that he couldn't have a starting role this year? I'd be a little surprised, but yeah, it's up for grabs. Spot 1 through 5 there, basically. I don't think anyone has their spot cemented next year. So if you want to compete for starting time, swing on by to East Lansing. Ryan Cole writes in, what should be expected from Velling next year? Jack Velling, that is the tight end. Was he actually a disappointment this year, or were my expectations too high from his stats at Oregon State, combined with my Heisman campaign with him in NCAA 2025? No one's opinions are ever skewed off what they do with them in a video game. Get out of here with that, Ryan Cole. You are within your rights to have high expectations based on that alone. But no, I don't think it was wrong to come in with sky-high expectations for Jack Velling. I mean, he certainly was sought after like he was. He had a great sophomore year at Oregon State, came in with 8 touchdowns in that sophomore campaign. And yes, 8 touchdowns would have been pretty improbable. Maybe not improbable. It would have been a little surprising if he replicated that number, but certainly did not think that he'd be closer to 0 touchdowns than he was 8 touchdowns. And guys, as you already know it, or maybe you tuned out at this point of the season, he did get just 1 touchdown. That was at the very last game against Rutgers. So no, I think it was a disappointing year for Jack Velling. I don't think that's, I dare I say he might even agree with that too. Yes, he did have a career high 36 catches, 411 yards. It was fine. He had, of course, that 1 touchdown. And, the touchdown stat can be a little like, okay, well, it's not truly indicative of how good of a season you had. Okay, fine. I also think he could have done a better job blocking, too. I don't think I'm out of line with that as well. I think everyone could have done a better job blocking for the running backs last year. But I also think, too, it's not out of line to say this, that I don't think it was entirely all on him. The fact that, maybe it wasn't the season that a lot of us fans expected him to have. This renaissance of the tight end position here in East Lansing, a position that, quite frankly, hasn't been anything to write home about, since Josiah Price was here, right? It's been a while since you've seen some strong tight end play. I don't got to tell you any more about that. You guys already know it because you've lived it. But there was no run game to respect last year for Michigan State. So, what does that do to play action plays? When the tight end can, block for a little bit and then leak out right at the seam. Hey, there's Jack Velling wide open 15 yards downfield. When you don't have a run game, that screws up a lot with the whole offense. I know that shocking analysis right there, but specifically for guys like Jack Velling, yeah, there's also, outside of Nick Marsh, not to be incredibly disrespectful to all the other wideouts, but there was really no other difference makers out there. Kind of like how Oregon State, you had your Silas Boldens, you had your Anthony Golds out there, speedy slot receivers that are taking attention away from other positions on the field. Whereas, they drop back to pass. Well, there's Marsh. We've got to know him. And, hey, there's Jack Velling. We've known about him since he was at Oregon State. So, hopefully some difference makers like Omari Kelly, like Krishan McCray, and, of course, sophomore year at Nick Marsh can make things better for Jack Velling. So what to expect from him next year? It's got to be stronger than one touchdown at least, but it's got to be also better blocking. Sure, something around 36 catches like he did this year. Not bad, like 3 catches a game. Maybe north of 40 next year, but yeah, it's got to be better. And if it's not, Michael Masunis, hey, he had a really strong start to the year last year before leaving with an injury. All right, guys, we will be back here in a hot second, but first you need to talk your ears off about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. You guys already know it because we've been talking about FanDuel all season long, but they have been keeping it hot this college football playoff season. Don't change that for the college football playoff coming up. You already know it. We will be liquid in an Indiana Hoosiers upset. I do like SMU to cover against Penn State. I don't think James Franklin will completely crap the bed, but you never know. If you think that he will, if you think SMU is the money line darling, go ahead and get over at it at FanDuel Sportsbook. And if you're a new customer, well, it gets even sweeter because new customers, when you bet $5, you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, guys, you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. It's over at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Also, daily fantasy sports, keep it rolling with Prize Picks. Now, what on earth is Prize Picks, guys? Well, it is where to get your real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you got to do is just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Guys, I'll say it again. You can win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. And join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pickmas. So celebrate Pickmas or celebrate any time of the year at Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Again, promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, really quick before basketball talk, there's one more football question. Golf Spartan 8 writes in, who will be our kicker in 2025? Kim was 32 of 39 at MSU and 19 of 21 this past season. Martin Connaughton. So he was a true freshman this year, didn't get any run on the field, but comes in from the great state of Idaho, the #5 kicker in the nation in last year's class, according to Cole's Kicking. So that's kicking recruiting service, and they also run camps, this and that. #5 kicker in the country. Now, is that guaranteed going to work out? Of course not. Like, kicking is a crapshoot in college, but yes, Martin Connaughton, a one-time Oregon State commit. Of course, he flipped to Michigan State when everyone else in the Beavers program did, so keep your eye out on that. Lieutenant Bishop, as we switch to basketball, Lieutenant Bishop writes in, it's early, but is this a Big Ten champion, Final Four, national championship team for Michigan State, or is there something missing from this team to not go the distance? It's safe to say I'm optimistic right now, right? Like, how could you not be optimistic? You would have to be a real cranky son of a gun to just watch this team not just win 7 of their last 8 games, but just the fashion they've been doing it in. We've said it up and down whenever we've talked about these games. Even the one they lost against Memphis, like, it wasn't a teary post-game show where it's like, oh, how could they lose? It was, no, like, Michigan State's still fine. They just ran into a really good Tigers team. They defend, they rebound, they run, they play Tom Izzo basketball. So, like, of course I'm optimistic. They have the depth, guys. Like, it's great. And I'm saying this after they only had 33 bench points against Oakland. I think it was like, their 8th game where they've had 30-plus bench points. Like, they've been killing it from the bench, guys. Like, they also have the guard play to have a really successful season. The three-point shooting is inching up game by game. That stretch of the first 6 games of the season was gnarly. I thought it'd be a problem all season long, but it has been getting a little better, guys. They've been shooting the rock at about, I think it was 37% was the stat that our guy Dave Klein of Spartans Hoop dug up in the last 5 games for Michigan State. So really solid. And speaking of solid, Xavier Booker is coming to life. After starting the season wondering, what do you do with this kid? Like, that doesn't really shoot the three-point ball well, largely seems disinterested to be on the court. Like, no. Ever since he got off that plane in Maui, I guess really ever since like halfway through Maui, like halftime of the Memphis game is where things really started to turn, it looked like. He's been a really strong player. And Michigan State also, this is important, guys. It sounds silly, but it's not. They're getting to the free throw line really well. The best they have in a few years. And they're also shooting at 80% from the line. They are top 20 in assist rate as well, guys. Like, they're good in the half-court offense. Like, it is enjoyable to watch this team again. Have not said that since 2020. Even when they were winning games, it was like, okay, woohoo, I guess we won. Great. No, it's nice. So the Big Ten, I can see it. Like, yeah, of course I can. Like, again, this team has won 7 of their last 8. They're 2-0 in Big Ten play right now. They have absolutely boat raced their 2 opponents. One, Minnesota, on the road. Not the greatest team in the Big Ten. And then a Nebraska team, which, like, not the greatest team in the Big Ten. Certainly not the worst, though. Nebraska is a solid team. They beat Creighton earlier this year, and they didn't beat Nebraska. They took them out to the field, dug a 10-foot pit, and just put them right in it and put the dirt on top and ran their car right over it. Like, that was a brutal beatdown that they had. So, yeah, of course I could see it. Right now, if you want to just, take it away from the MSU slappy over here, well, the computer's at barttorvik.com. That's right, one of my favorite websites. They like Michigan State, too, as the 4th Big Ten team most likely to win this conference title. UCLA, Illinois, and Michigan are all ahead of Michigan State right now. But right now, just 2 games into the conference season, yeah, I'm happy to be one of the top 4 teams listed. It's going to be anyone's conference, right? Like, I could very well see 13-7 winning this conference title. Can Michigan State do that? Yeah, absolutely. Again, for all the reasons we just named, offensively, stylistically, the personnel they have. And also, like, with those 3 teams that I mentioned, like UCLA, Illinois, Michigan, like, those teams all have holes too. Of course they do. Like, it's going to be a gnarly Big Ten season. So what we do need to see more of, though, just before I start raising the banner up to Breslin's rafters, I would like to see a little more consistency from, there's 2 guys that have been kind of up and down. Like, it hasn't been a total dud of a season for them, but consistency from Trey Hallman, for example. Like, yes, Jace Richardson has been great. Don't think it's fair to count on the true freshman on more consistency than the guy that's in his 3rd year right now. Again, not saying that Trey's having a horrendous year or that, oh my God, we just need to cut him immediately, but it's been a little more up and down than you'd like. And also Frankie Fiddler, guy from Omaha. Again, it's been like a fine season for him, I guess, just because I'm in a good mood. But yeah, I would like to see a little more consistency from those 2 guys to really believe. And, just beyond a Big Ten title, like thinking of a Final Four run, or dare I say, title number 2. I'm not there yet because I do need to see that more from Trey and Frankie. But like, also, we need to see what this all looks like against good front courts. Michigan State hasn't played like a solid, like a really above average front court, I think, in a very long time. I think maybe even since the Kansas game. I like Colorado, they had some length. Fine. Okay, if you want to go to another Power 6 team, sure, I guess. But by and large, they really have not faced strong front court. So yes, Kohler's been great so far this year. Shimon Sapala, okay, like really, really strong pickups so far, it's looking like. I want to see what this looks like against good front courts. And unfortunately, those 3 teams that we mentioned above Michigan State in the Big Ten, like Illinois, Michigan especially, and UCLA, well, that's where they make their hay. They got good front court. Like, Illinois is a little more well-rounded than that, but Michigan especially, well, yeah, they win and lose by their big men. So we'll see how it goes against Michigan State. And, of course, when you get in the tournament, it's all matchup dependent. You face a team that has a really good front court. Like, okay, like Jackson Kohler's been fine. Zapala, strong. But if you're going to rely on those guys for anything more than, what they've been offering against some mediocre front courts, and I would get a little worried. However, if they face Michigan and like Kohler and Zapala and Cooper do look strong against the Wolverines front court, They look strong against UCLA's front court. They look strong against other Big Ten front courts. Like, not me booking flights to San Antonio, just on a whim. No, come on. Who would I? Yeah, I probably would. It'd be great. Oh, God, I'd let that get to my head so fast. All right, to take us home, Tom Lizzo. Love that. It's a great name. Ever notice Steven is... This is mean. It's fair, though. You ever notice Steven Izzo's playing career coincided with his father's worst streak? My theory is that Pops went soft, having his son around. Is it a coincidence how rebounding seemingly came back overnight once Steven left? Now, that sounds like slanderous and ridiculous, and it probably is. Now, first and foremost, as a former coach's son, of course not at a Division I basketball level, but my dad coached me for the better part of what was nearly 2 decades. No, like... No, like life doesn't get any easier whether you are the coach's son, and like certainly doesn't take a step back here. That's not to say my dad was cracking the whip and going full Bob Knight every practice, but no, like you don't lose an edge just because your kid's in the room. I assume that Tom Izzo would subscribe to that too. I'm sure if he has Steven Izzo that, he would also back that up too. The part that I do want to focus on though, like, is it not nothing that rebounding has just gotten a lot better overnight? And sure, like, you know, you add Zapala to the team. Like, that's a little better. You have a healthy Jackson Kohler to start the year. Of course, guys, like, we are going to be rational about this. I do think it is interesting, though, that, oh, hey, this team, who's their walk-ons right now? Like, yeah, sure, you still got Nick Sanders, who's like a smooth 5'5", whatever he is. Oh, you got the twins from Okemos, the Walton twins that are both like 6'7". And, oh, yeah, that's right, the other guy redshirting, Jesse McCulloch, who's 6'10". We're going from guys practicing that were, no disrespect, great guy, fan favorite, love Steven Izzo, that were like not 6'7", and Davis Smith, who was again not 6'7", Nick Sanders, who's not 6'7", and all of a sudden like having a walk-on team that adds, if not for nothing else, height, length, probably the ability to grab a rebound every once in a while, and all of a sudden Michigan State's top 20 in both offensive and defensive rebounding percentages. Maybe that's not nothing. I don't know. This sounds stupid to say aloud, but like this is how, like, I gotta say, Tom Lizzo, I was thinking that too as I was watching them tear up the boards yet again against Oakland. I'm thinking this team looks like they've gotten some better rebounding practices this last year. So maybe it's not insane to think. It's not fair to Steven Izzo or Davis Smith or Nick Sanders or anyone like that, but I think it's probably better to practice against the 6'7" Walton twins and 6'10" Jesse McCulloch than what you have the last few years. So we'll end it at that. We'll end on that little fun note right there. But no, hey, guys, again, mailbag is always open, especially with the holiday coming up next week. Guys, lockedonspartans@gmail.com. We'll get to a ton of questions next week. But hey, you know what? We also got one more show to get to this week. It's going to be with our guy, Brennan Moore of Spartans Illustrated. Keep it tuned. Locked on Spartans, your team in green and white 5 days a week. Love you all. Go green.